Thanks to all, welcome to be here. I will focus in the importance of the combination between research and activism in dealing with these challenging topics of climate justice, especially in the transition from fossil fuel. First, I start with an example of action from below, from the citizen. This is the popular referendum of Ecuador in August 2023, a referendum to leave fossil fuel underground in the National Park of Yasuni. This referendum asked the citizens if they want to leave underground below a park the resource of fossil fuel. And this referendum reached an important result. Almost 60% of citizens decided to leave the fossil fuel underground. This result is very high because in Ecuador, voting is compulsory. If you don't vote, you lose some rights. It means this is around the 60% of the population, the voting population, decided to take this important decision on fossil fuel. Here we can see an image giving you an idea of the complexity of citizen science, the complexity of society involved in this campaign. We can recognize indigenous representative from social movement, urban movement, rural movement, and an important partner, the university. Universidad Andina Simón Bolivar is also our partner, and here we can see two of our colleagues involved in this action. It is a combination of social contribution and research. The debate before the voting was very hot. Here we can read an article in which the Ministry of Energy say people cannot live with air and birds and reptiles, a sort of mocking of the right of the people, the right of nature, because oil is more important than nature. But this article is a sort of representation of what we call the structure of obstruction. So the delay in implementing policies to make a transition from fossil fuel is have to face the obstruction of media, power, companies, and a very complex system in which also universities, which media initiatives try to shape the long-term and short-term agenda to maintain the importance of fossil fuel to avoid this transition. But another important element is a sort of not tuning of agenda. Here you can see a timeline. I started this timeline from the 90s. In the 90s, in Ecuador and Latin America, started the movement of citizens to create the idea of leaving fossil fuel underground. And this idea was created in 2003 by the organization Oil Watch. In blue, you see all the history of the initiative Yasuni-TT in Ecuador, in which the idea was to leave fossil fuel underground. The government supported this idea, but at the end, in 2023, the government decided to leave the initiative to start drilling the oil. And at the same time, from the citizens, a campaign to collect signature for the referendum was initiated. The government denied these activities. And finally, in 2023, the Constitutional Court of Ecuador recognized the mistakes of the government and allowed the referendum with the result of 2023, the winning of the referendum. But as you can see, there is other contribution here. The contribution from citizens, innovative contribution, anticipating policies. Policies arrived a little with delay from the pressure from below. For example, the Paris Agreement 2015 for the first time entered in the issue of common but differentiated responsibility, but only in 2023 in Dubai, there was the first commitment to abandon fossil fuel in the global governance of climate change. So, how can see it is very important the contribution from below, from citizens, from research, to anticipate structural innovation also in policies. What does it mean, climate justice related to fossil fuel? I want to share with you some consideration. When we deal with the fossil fuel a justice issue, we should consider four main group of actors. People, for example, excluded from affordable energy supply and transport services. Maybe these people cannot aware of the impact of oil or fossil fuel. There is also people experiencing the environmental effect, socio-environmental effect of climate change. Or there are people living in sacrifice zone in which energy is produced, fossil fuel are extracted, etc. Or issue related with people working in transport and energy sector. So when the different policy player enter in the topic, they think not in all the actors. Sometimes, for example, there is the preoccupation for the workers of oil and energy sector, but this is not the only preoccupation, because when we deal with climate justice, we should deal with different contribution of different players in emission, or for example, different contribution in land use change, or this disproportion of impact, or for example, the different access to climate adaptation solution, what we call the green gentrification. And any issue of justice has to do with intersectionalities, with the geographicalness, the economical condition, the cultural condition, the gender, etc. Here, for example, in a recent article, we analyzed what is the justice issue on the gas flaring in Ecuador, and how a campaign from below with from farmers and indigenous group is fighting for the human and environmental right. And or for example, how in this area of Ecuador people live multiple injustices related to fossil fuel, contamination, but at the same time less investment from the state, etc. Another interesting contribution is to make a reflection on the real acceptance of oil operation by local people. And in the scientific literature, we call it the issue of sacrifice zone. To extract, to process, to transport, to produce energy from fossil fuel, to dispose, any of these places is a place in which issue of embodied energy injustice is involved, in which we have a sacrifice zone. For example, sacrifice zone in oil spill, sacrifice zone in oil extraction. This is a work we did, for example, in the case of Yasuni in Ecuador. Here you can see, for example, an image of gas flaring in Ecuador, in which you can see below the gas flaring, you find the desert, because the temperature is very high, vegetation cannot grow, a lot of animal and insects are attracted by the light and killed close to the light. Or, for example, this is in a typical area of deforestation to create an oil platform in the middle of the Amazon. Or, for example, this is a contamination area related to extraction. We are in a very wet ecosystem in tropical rainforest, and normally water is not injected in the well, but is distributed in the land. Or this, for example, the next is an image of a contamination of sludge below the forest. Or this is an imaging, for example, of the the action of animals with sludge, with salty sludge, and these enter in the ecosystem chain, or for example, the issue of sludge management inside Amazon rainforest. So when we deal with climate justice, we should deal with 5 dimensions: the distribution of effect among actors, the procedural process in which we include or exclude actors, the recognition of right and vision, or the issue of considering the global dimension of justice. We are people living in the same planet, and so a cosmopolitic approach is very important. And the other side, a reparative approach for people receiving impact, how we can repair this. And at the same time, justice is a justice between species, between generation, or between state. When we deal with the just transition, we have, it is, it appears a catching word, creating immediately approval or immediately consensus, but we have a different way of understanding transition. From neoliberal transition, more related in a corporate-centered or green economy, to a transformative transition based on real change of the system and recognition of human and nature right. So the transition challenge is not a pacific change. When we look for transition approaches, we see different way of intending transition approaches, from a ingenuous technological, technocratic transition to transformative approaches. There is not one just transition. We have many just transition, and the different just transition is the result of a combination between industrial approaches, climate policies, proposal of union, climate justice movement, and the contribution and reflection, for example, of political ecology. And a framework of just transition challenge the ideal techno-optimistic win-win framework. In transition, there is losers and winners, and we should understand who is paying the cost of transition. I'm very happy here at the end of this night we have the contribution of Benjamin Sovakol, in which he entered in the contradiction of the transition of the new mineral for transition, for example. So we need to make a strong reflection on transition, looking for a more inclusive and real justice framework. For example, a framework framed by Henri's in 2021, based in human rights approach with an inclusive way, a progressive fiscal contract to sharing and to distribute justice, transforming economies, for example, a new contract with nature, addressing historical justice as in a reparative way, and to find a new contract between actors, a new form of solidarity and alliances. So the challenge is to build new place of decarbonization. As a geographer, this is our point of view, our contribution. We live in place, human create place. The long relation between humans and nature is based on safe place and durable place. So a decarbonization of economy and society, a transition from fossil fuel to renewable, these are the challenge. The challenge in energy matrix do not means automatically justice in human and nature dimension. So we should overcome the a sort of naive technocratic positivist vision, and in order to avoid to generate a new layer of climate injustice. For example, some reflection coming from Latin America reveal, for example, the green extractivism in transition, the need to decolonize energy transition, to avoid accumulation by dispossession, by decarbonization, and to design real systematic regional transition. And an approach for policies is we need to move from a naive just transition to strong and deep transformation, accelerating the academic awareness to work on transformative changes, for example, and to use a conflict transformation approach in order to understand how to include actor in change, and the making of low carbon space, low carbon place is a collective challenge requiring to involve actors and to focus on the quality of place, not just in project. And in perspective of fossil fuel, we should deconstruct the petroleum scape to adopt a new, create a new space, a new place of transition, and creating new landscape, critically analyzing what was the result of 2 centuries of fossil fuel. What possible action? One action is to act through a geovisualization, a imagination of change. This is one of our tasks and objectives of this year, to build a world atlas of unburnable carbon. It means thinking on the project of a Yasuni National Park, this Yasunization of Earth as a form of change the relation between space and place and society. There is promising initiatives like Cuenca Sagrada, initiative from indigenous community of Amazon of Peru and Ecuador, in which they are challenging the fossil fuel destiny of this place to create a bioregional plan. But we imagined, for example, how we can change the Amazon rainforest from a place of a territorial combination based on oil extraction. Here you see all the area of Amazon rainforest with oil concession, for example, the grid of seismic activities, and how we can change where to leave fossil fuel on the ground, analyzing, for example, the Amazon rainforest, in which we have protected areas, indigenous communities, or, for example, this is the case of Bolivian and Peru Amazon, for example. And or, for example, this is another initiatives in where to leave fossil fuel on the ground, the case of Ecuador. So the use of geographical knowledge, geovisualization as a way of creating an imaging of a transition before the action. Or this, for example, is another reflection on the role of mapping and geography and the mapping representation in the change. This is an important element related, for example, with the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. We have Sepora here, and we'll enter in this important topic. And the second dimension is involving the use of climatic justice with extreme citizen science. This is a case in which we worked a participatory mapping approach to support an action, a legal action of citizens, farmers, and indigenous people against the gas flaring in Ecuador. And here, through the maps, we were able to make visible the impact, the socio-environmental impact. And through the maps, we were able to give to the justice system the possibility for the judge to give the reason to the to indigenous people and farmers to win the lawsuit. In this case, now we are supporting all the work to recognize the right of indigenous and local people for closing this unsustainable process of burning the gas of oil. So we can say how important it is to adopt an extreme citizen science approach in which research project is framed between researcher and citizens. And I want to conclude with a couple of considerations and the challenge of climate justice in multi-situated multitudes. From one side, it is important to understand, to remember the contribution of David Hoare, in which he say that the knowledge, skill, attitude, and value we use to industrialize the earth is totally different from what we need to heal the earth and to change this condition. And another contribution is change is possible from below if a free multitude of actors take the challenge of change. And so this multitude of farmers, of peasants, indigenous groups, citizens, women, movement, etc., because this free multitude is inspired by the hope, and they want to cultivate life, not just to avoid death. Many thanks, and the floor is yours.